It's been a while since I've been live, and I wanted to. I hit the end of a journal today, and I started going through it before I opened up a new one just to pull some insights. And I thought, in the spirit of not only connecting with myself, but connecting with you, my audience, and then also eventually turning this video into smaller pieces of content, I would share some not necessarily connected insights from the last 5.5 months in my journal. So this one starts in July of 2024. I'm not going to read everything. I'm just going to kind of go through and share some tidbits and nuggets, what I call tapas, little appetizers. Grief is in everything. Love is in everything. Grief is not fear, it is love. Sadness is not fear, it is love. This is a quote by Martin Prechtel. Make enough to pay the bills. Eat well, live well, dress well, and give gifts. Any surplus must go back into the ground. This is a big one. Allison, you are not mainstream. Who else needs to hear that? You are not mainstream. And living in a society where mainstream is thrown at us all the time, we need to remember that. I need to remember that. Let's see. This is a fun one. I haven't finished exploring this, but I started. There's a page in here about my grandmother, Thelma Crow. And Thelma Crow is not somebody I ever really gave a chance. I had a lot of stories about my dad's parents because of the way they treated us and because of the way they treated our father, and just mixed up memories. And so I never gave Thelma a chance. And I've started a piece of writing about it. I haven't published it yet, but who in your life can you at this point look back and say, I never really gave them a chance? Like I didn't really know her, but she was coming up because I look like her. Start seeing my grandmother and my aunt in the mirror these days. I've done a lot of, I don't even want to call it work. I've just done a lot of being with the noticing of shame for undoing so much in my business, for undoing friendships. I don't have any regrets, but I just noticed the, oh, you really screwed thing up vibe for undoing business friendships. And then even for getting my ADD and autism diagnosis. I noticed that there's a part of me that always is reaching back for Allison before all that, who was totally masked. I'm not gonna read you everything. Oh, this was a big one. So one of the things that led me to my ADD diagnosis, which ended up leading me to my autism diagnosis, which led me to unraveling so much and really starting to learn who I am as I deconstruct the ways I was molded from the outside in. So rejection sensitive dysphoria is what my experience of that is what ended up having me seek professional help, which led to my diagnosis. And then 2 years and 8 months later, hearing a random podcast where somebody talked about the opposite end of rejection dysphoria, rejection sensitive dysphoria, which is something that 100% of people with ADHD experience. The opposite end of that spectrum is recognition responsive euphoria. And it helped me realize that most of my life was run on recognition responsive euphoria. So the euphoria you get when you're seen and loved and all that other stuff. Oof. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, there's a whole page here on unlearning that feels really good. Self-trust involves the difficult path of unlearning everything you thought you knew. It doesn't feel glorious. It brings grief. But it's also a soul calling, I think. It often feels lonely. It can activate parts of us that are conditioned to positivity only. And so some of us go it alone. I wrote, Allie, you asked for a soul-full life. Care of the soul, sacred contracts, soulful living, soulful success, soulful self-leadership, and IFS. So I've gotten exactly what I asked for. Deconstructing religion and the culture of my youth, racism, colonization, patriarchy, politics, capitalism, all led me here. It's been I'm still not done. And I told somebody the other day, if I were really confident, I would probably be talking a lot more about the toxic nature of high demand religion, Christianity. That feels, that's interesting to say out loud. But so many of my beliefs that I had to unwind as not true came from my religious schooling. I have a whole lot of pages where I start my day slowing down, self-connecting, connecting with my body. Let's see. Oh, I discovered Rick Rubin this year through my friend Justin Foster was talking about Rick Rubin's book on creativity. And I listened to that and have read it and have really enjoyed it. For me also, I think it's going to be a book that I want to, that I want to absorb a little bit more. And I wrote down Rick Rubin, known for obsession with minimalism and authenticity. What do I want to be known for? I don't know that this is my answer to what I want to be known for, but I put down authenticity because I hear that so much. But I wrote, helping others navigate the journey of being human where the world is constantly pressing you to perform. That feels nice. I probably won't remember it after today. A quote from Rick Rubin's book, Be in the Wonderful State That Makes Art Inevitable. That's by Robert Henry. So Rick Rubin was quoting Robert Henroy, actually. And that is something I was talking with my coach about yesterday, about how much effort it requires me to get into the state that makes art inevitable. And I am slowly learning that this is my job. My job is to do the things that it requires, however long it takes, without shame, without striving, without pressure, to be in the state that makes art inevitable. And I'm not just talking about painting. I'm talking about the art of living, the art of my work, the art of my relationships. Here's a distinction in IFS and neurodivergence. There is a woman, I cannot remember her last name at the right now, but her name is Sarah, and she teaches, she's a late diagnosed autistic, and she talks about IFS in the context of neurodivergence, which is so important. And there's a difference between, so when you have autism or any kind of neurodivergent brain, you have hardware in your brain that needs certain strategies, which is very different from emotional burdens that require therapy or coaching. And that is one of the biggest, like, as I separate those two, Sarah Bergenfeld is her name. She says that IFS, and in IFS, she says that core self in part. So core self is autistic. Core self is ADHD. In the same way, someone might be core self is, it's just the way you're born. It's not a pathology. And So we have strategies. One of the analogies that I've used quite a few times recently to help people understand is if you have curly hair, and in the 70s and 80s, we did not have products for curly hair. We did not have strategies and support tools, but there was a lot of stigma. And now we have strategies and support tools and specific regimens of care specifically for the specific kind of curly hair you can have, because you can have curly hair that loves protein or hates protein and behaves differently according to that. So, understanding what is a hardware that needs strategies in my, not only my body, but my life, and then versus what we call burdens. So trauma, coping patterns that aren't working, burdens that need unburdening, something that needs therapy or coaching to unburden, to release, because there are certain things in our hardware that are never going to change. But let's say the shame around having that hardware can be burdened. And that distinction felt really yummy. I've done a lot of work paying attention to my shoulders and my back. I've had frozen shoulder for over a year. It's interesting. After a year, the pain is moving to a different area of the same shoulder. But that's been interesting to think about the responsibilities that I tend to overtake and what are the burdens my shoulder is carrying. Lots of calling in of right aligned clients. This is cute. This is a pretty page. I have real bright. The other day I prayed for something I don't know that I've ever prayed for before. I prayed for power. And the spirit realm winks have been nonstop. Maybe I'll try that one again. Pray for more power. I've never prayed for power except for on August 13th. Let's see. Here's what I wrote about it. Power is in the substance of spirit. Life is in the experience of empowerment. The power of spirit moves through me. Nothing on the outside can command you. That's self-trust. I love when I write something like, holy cow, Allison, that's really pretty good. Oh, self-trust, not needing approval of others, caring for those parts of me. How much power am I going to give that? I don't know what that is. Recognize, this is a good one. Recognize when you are hemorrhaging energy and power. I call that frothing. Everybody can do it in a different way. I have one client that catastrophizes. I have other clients that shut down. I can shut down. But almost as an information, not as an emotional response and not with shame, but as information, can we learn to recognize when we are hemorrhaging energy and power, and what is our manifestation of that, so that we can gently course correct. I wrote unlearning again. Let's see. IFS gave me the how-to of caring for my parts to reconnect and reestablish attunement to all parts of me. Parts of the human journey fracture connection, and IFS is the tool that has helped me the most in learning how to reconnect with those. This is this one I'm still working on. Slowly, gently. So much pressure on myself, impossible standards, grief in the lungs. And I have some art of my lungs. I've had a lot of, since my heart attack, actually since 2020. So I don't know if it's COVID. I don't know if it's the heart attack, but I've had costochondritis, and I've had just a sense of tightness in my chest and lungs that is a learning opportunity for me. I wrote, don't tell me I think too much. Nothing outside of me can command me. And then I did some parts work with the pressure I put on myself. Hello, pressure I put on myself. I just want to connect with you, be with you. hello, sabotage. And I listened and wrote down what it said. I'm not going to share that with you. Allison, what would it be like to let joy in, let fun and passion in? And that is something I don't want to force, but I have been really missing the joy. The last 2022, 23, and 24 have sucked ass. 21 also sucked ass. And so I'm ready to let joy in, let fun in. I'm ready to let passion come back. That's something that's been a big kind of awareness and concern, is like, where did my passion go? And I also know that I can see the purpose in all of this now. I may not have seen it on the day that I wrote this. Some of the things that have helped me this year so when you unmask as an autistic or ADD person with these nervous systems and brains, when I unmasked, a lot of my confidence was attached to neurologically, those synapses were attached to masking that I was doing, that I didn't even know that I was doing. So my way if my way of being created, for me, it's usually success in my business. My confidence was in that thread of synapses. And so when I stopped masking and success kind of sputters, my confidence has had an opportunity to rebuild. It's literally deconstructed, which is a little scary for someone who's been confident for a very long time to experience so much doubt and honestly insecurity. And I feel so much compassion. I'm rebuilding all that from the inside out. And one of the tools I've done to do that is some cognitive remembering of my credibility. So I have some credibility lists that I remind myself of, because otherwise I forget. That my inner wisdom will show me the way, that my body will show me the way. This is a tool I use in my journal sometimes. I highly recommend it, especially in this world that can use toxic positivity to shove parts under the rug. Most of my experience with parts so far is that they want attunement, they want connection, and they want witness. And they want to be able to express themselves, at least the parts in my system. And so I will often notice that a part has complaints or has some sadness that they want to share, or they have something they want to share verbally. And so I will create a page in my journal for sacred complaints. And I draw a little line around it, and I just let them go nonstop. So this one is like my shoulders, neck, backs, hip ache, feeling a lack of creativity. I basically have a whole page of complaining and then loving myself and my parts that were complaining. That's good. I've been having to do a lot of remembering how I thrive, especially in business. Because there is so much neurotypical BS put out over and over and over and over again, whether we want to explore it or not. If you open up any kind of media, there's always something in your feed that is pushing something that may work for a lot of people, but definitely crushes the spirit of people with neurodivergence. So Business Thrive list, those are great to make. Allison learns about her autism. So like I said, none of this is necessarily connected. This is just my journal. This one has a sticky notes that I remember. Bottom up thinking. This was a big one for me. Bottom up thinking is an associative thinking process where we take in way more sensory information and detail. It's one of the reasons context and nuance are so valuable to me. It is not linear. It is not efficient. We gather lots of information and we retain prior to learning and memories. And we take all this stuff into consideration and we start building. You can call it out of the box thinking. It's one of those things that people call, a superpower. But it's also one of the things that gets highly misunderstood when in conversation and communication with somebody who's neurotypical. So, for example, if we ask a question, can you help me out? What did you mean by saying that? We're not doubting the person. We're seeking clarity, and a lot of times we get pushback like, you're being difficult because we're seeking clarity, because clarity and information and understanding are so valuable to us. We want to know exactly what those words or exactly what those phrases mean. And it's interesting because that can also be a source of unconscious taking on an experience of rejection or pushback, or you're doing it wrong. It's exhausting. It requires lots of sleep. I felt so valid one day recently. My husband was talking to somebody and he said, when I met Allison, I never met somebody who required so much sleep. And I used to be real like, yay, Allison is famous for naps. But I'm a little bit more serious about it now. Like, I require tons of rest and rejuvenation. And to allow that, we are constantly, I am seeing so much, feeling so much, processing so much that consumes energy. I don't do vague. I get frustrated and hurt when I'm misunderstood or accused of malintent because I see more than so many. That is a huge statement for me right there. Part of my autism, if I think about friendships that I have lost or people that I have probably disappointed or fractured relationships, I guarantee you it is probably because there is a communication gap or a misunderstanding gap for the way that my autistic brain works. I can get frustrated and hurt when I am misunderstood. I'm reading this again. When I am misunderstood or accused of malintent, it hits from very young age. Things must have happened. Things did happen where I was, someone jumped down my throat or was aggressive with me when I was being curious or when I felt misunderstood, because I see more than most people. Just quit sharing. So, for example, as far as bottom up thinking, cognitive behavioral therapy or PTFAR or CTFAR, these like thoughts, feelings, emotions, that is a top down thinking model that is influencing thinking and cognition to control how you feel. But the way my system will work best is if I allow it to both have its cognitive processes, but all of its other somatic processes. Um, and so many systems of oppression press down our inner authority. And I am just now building all that back up. So I'm realizing it cognitively, but then doing the practices that I need to do to strengthen not only my cognitive knowing, but to give confidence to my body knowing, my somatic, my sensory. You can call it intuition. You can call it psychic. It was never psychic. It was always autism. I feel like my autism is showing up more than ADHD lately. It's fascinating. Anyway, breathe out. There's a lot of breathe in, breathe out, breathe here now in this journal. Joyless. Let's see. Some spiritual work. I may not talk about it out loud, but I do a lot of spiritual work still. I on this page, I call it an unlearning season. I had to be willing. I had to reconnect. I had to reconnect my head and my brain to my body. I had to deconstruct the systems of oppression. And when you take the time to deconstruct any system of oppression, and listen, a system can be your family. It can be in the context of a relationship. It's not just these big anthropological systems that we talk about, or societal systems. There are so many different ones. But to do that also welcomes in grief, and remembering that grief is love. And so giving time and space for grief, giving time and space for that to metamorphosize. Anytime you negate one of the three aspects of yourself, physical, spiritual, mental, the universe will intensify what needs attention. And Mama had a heart attack 2 years ago. I did not have a heart attack from cholesterol. I had a heart attack, a tear, stress heart attack. Again, if you're just joining me or if you're seeing now, I'm just going through my journal and reconnecting with insights, and I thought I would use it as an opportunity. Hi, Alan Santos. I thought I would use it as an opportunity just to reconnect with y'all and go live. I've been out of practice of a lot of things. I've been doing a lot of appreciation and gratitude work because I can get so thick and the heavy. I've also been doing a lot of letters from love work, like unconditional love. What would you have me know? Because I allow myself to also spend time listening to and hearing parts and their complaints. And I heard something yesterday, or maybe it was even this morning, and it was a neuroscientist, a doctor, MD, who was talking about how we absolutely wouldn't grow if we didn't have these, quote, negative experiences. I don't like to call them negative. Centering, good morning. I drew a sunshine for myself. Centering my heart, my breath, my hips, and my body, and my head. Setting intention before direction. A simple welcoming of good morning to all parts of me. Hello, shame. Hello, doubt. Hello, weary, can't keep up. Hello, I'm doing it wrong. Hello, loss, disappointment, and grief. Hello, lonely. Hello, feels like I don't belong. I am here for you. I see you. I will not leave you, and your concerns and desires are valid. Okay. Deconstruction from high demand religion. The high demand religion I grew up with was essentially evangelical Baptist. I was taught in school through shame, blame, and manipulation that you cannot trust your mind or body. I was taught that agency exists outside of me, and I was taught that my feelings and emotions were bad and not from God. I was not only not given agency, I was denied agency. There's a thing called interoception, which develops when you're young. It is your body's ability to understand its internal states. So, for example, knowing when you have to pee, or knowing when you're hungry or thirsty, but also in this ability of the body to be aware. So things that are conscious and unconscious, like hunger, heart rate, pain, and temperature, but listening to the body's no. Emotional regulation, empathy, self-awareness, and decision-making. And high demand religion, and the things that were told to me by people that I loved and trusted. My mom asked me, she said one time, why didn't you tell me? Well, I didn't know that it was not healthy. I'm not saying the person doing it had any conscious awareness, but when we're running around teaching these supposed spiritual Christian principles, high demand religion principles, we are denying and we are stopping the development of internal agencies of human beings. And if you're deconstructing other systems of power, the short end of that is so that you can control them, and so that you can get them to spend or give money to shit they don't need to care about. It denies and teaches people to disconnect from their body's wisdom. then that initiates PTSD. It stops curiosity, activates hypervigilance, and the protective mechanisms, and activates coping skills. You are not inherently bad. Interoception. And then the next page I wrote, God bless them, God bless us, God bless me. I've been studying a lot, and I've been studying a lot about adult children of alcoholics and PTSD, and that high demand religion, the hypervigilance, the difficulty with emotions, and low self-esteem that come from a coping response where you adapt yourself to be pleasing other people. Hello, fellow recovering people pleasers. Let's see. Parts work. I did some work around my heart attack and all the grief. Like it started in 2001 and I did 2024 and back. And I just wrote down all the heartfelt losses just as a space to honor them. So my dog's dying, perimenopause, Rocky dying, all kinds of things that just to really almost put a little significant marker to honor loss, because a lot of times when I would feel these uncomfortable emotions, now not necessarily around dogs dying, I feel like that has been a portal, and working with dogs allows me to feel a certain way. And just going back and going, that was a really big loss, and it's valid that it hurts. A lot of de-shaming work. I actually just bought David Bedrick's book, The Unshaming Way. I haven't opened it yet, but I'm excited to. It's one of the things I'm very aware of when I'm doing parts work is there's also usually a shame part. So this also connects with self-trust. It connects with self-autonomy. It connects with going against the grain, and it connects with being neurodivergent. And so just noticing how shame shows up in my system, in my thinking, in my body, so that I can recognize it. There's like the shame. There's so much de-shaming. I mean, you can take that word de-shame and know right now, oh wow, that carries shame for me. And even if it's, especially, I don't know, I don't run around, I don't have one of those internal systems, and I don't have an inner critic that is constantly saying obvious mean things. It's taken me a couple of years to realize that I actually am pretty hard on myself. Here's a fun page. And if you're watching this, you're clearly on social media or YouTube or something, but it's a place where I'm just reconnecting myself to the universal algorithm instead of the technology companies' algorithms, where the universe loves to match me with right-aligned people who are looking for me and what I can help them with. That's a fun one to remember. Noticing what were my unconscious mass. I've done a lot of praying, which to me feels very vulnerable in the sense of so that praying for power, praying. I've been praying to not achieve more, but almost for gifts from the universe, in the sense there's nothing in me that either deserves or doesn't deserve it. But yeah, I've been willing to pray, and in my praying, ask instead of tell. And a lot of times in my praying, I would tell instead of be vulnerable and ask. Anybody else who is hyper independent might understand that. I have the surrender. I must ask for help because I can't see what I can't see. Letting go of the internalized attachment to be good. This one is fascinating. Let's see. I've done a lot of writing about this experience of midlife, what that means for me, what I'm hearing from clients, what I'm hearing from people who email me back when I talk about midlife experience. And for me, midlife, like what defines midlife is not so much the age, but the massive the roles and physical, mental, emotional work transitions we go through. And, even when kids were little in kindergarten, transitions are the hardest times for them. So all these transitions kick up a lot of stuff for midlife people. I was listening to Xavier Red Follows Sun. Okay. The answer is in community. This one is such a polarizing thing for me because I love being with people and I hate being with people. But healing happens in community, not in algorithms online. Healing happens when we co-regulate with people. And it's one of the things I've been asking. That's another prayer I ask for is like, I need in-person community. And I have lots of limiting beliefs around that because of where I live. More shoulder pain work. Let's see. Oh, this one's fun. So over the last few years, I've been unblending my personal and professional. And somewhere I have a picture of 2 watercolor blotches that are all mushed together. And they can still overlap. There's just more clear boundaries. So I've been doing a lot of internal boundary work and internal awareness. And it's interesting. I've been watching Shameless with my husband. And we're on season 7 now. And as we watch these kids who grew up in utter poverty and drug and alcohol abuse, and when Philip Lip goes off to college and he's, working with his professor or whatever, like, it's interesting to see that these kids, as they become adults, don't have any concept of boundaries, because when you are raised in when you are raised in that kind of a alcoholic addict environment, my whole body got hot. So I've been doing a lot of work to really understand what was not good as a kid. Not from a this horrible thing happened, but like, oh, of course you didn't know. You were powerless in your childhood. And this last week I heard Ashley Judd talk on Anderson Cooper's podcast about grief. And I could recognize that she was using recovery language. And she did mention, I have this in the Closer to Now pages, but she did mention, she said, we were powerless as children. And just to acknowledge the little children inside of me, like, you were powerless. It's not your fault, and it wasn't your responsibility. And then we developed coping mechanisms. And she used that phrase that I've often heard at the beginning of AA meetings. I have family members, and I've attended many as a support. But that phrase that, we recognize that our life became unmanageable. Well, that happens outside of the AA rooms too. Yeah. I did some work here about being a realist with hope. I used to be optimist, what I would call an optimist. And I shifted my identity to be a realist with hope. And the realist in me means that it's safe to be the real you. It's safe to see clearly the reality of what's going on and then create a strategy that gives you hope. And I think part of that is because so much of my childhood dismissed what was hard and bad, and I was gaslit into not believing it, which made it unsafe for me. So it was actually safer for me to see the reality of difficult things. This is one of the reasons I care about politics. Everything is political. Everything is political. And seeing all those patterns and shit. Yeah. Any other really good stuff, Allie? Midlife discombobulation. Oh, revisiting ADHD, autistic regression, and burnout. That's a thing where skills are attached to those masks. I talked about that before. I have a whole lot of I can't remember. I also had a big moment this year. I drink very little, and it's funny because for many years y'all would see me drink, and you would see me drink online, and I love my wine. Wine causes an inflammation response in my body these days. Um, that causes physical pain. I have a lot of I'm dealing with a lot of chronic pain lately, and so I've pretty much I wouldn't say I don't drink. I had a glass of wine actually 2 nights ago for the first time in a long time, but just to recognize how much a glass of wine or two kind of calmed down the autism marker symptoms experience. That was fascinating just to make those connections like, oh, that's what drinking did for me. Because I never really understood when like people would say they drank to push away the pain. I realize now that like drinking helped me dull the overstimulation. I've been exploring my elemental self, like what is my state of being. So that leads me to this season as we wrap up the year. Instead of like goal planning, I'm doing some reevaluating as I feel like I'm coming out of this cocoon. I'm like, oh, what are my values? I know what my values have been, but have they changed? So I'm doing some, renovation. What do I want to keep? What do I want to release? And what do I want to bring on? So with my values, because my core values, I remember being a teacher of core values, and we were always taught to teach that core values don't change. Core values do change when you heal your shit. They absolutely change when you heal your shit. My strength finder changed as I healed my stuff. And so I've been going back to other elementary stuff like be, do, have. I have not been driven by things I want to have. What I really want to have is cash for physical health care. Oh, yeah. So that's been kind of interesting. Oh, I had a good experience earlier this year, actually in October, where I had to advocate for myself inside of myself, which was kind of cool. It was just like, oh, that's what it feels like to advocate for yourself instead of shame for yourself. I've been doing a lot of like writing down. I have so many in the past. I've been able to be guided by one thing, but there's so many different intersectional things. So I have written down on here, this is around thought leadership, which I don't really like that phrase, but one day it came up for me. So thought leadership, and I wrote IFS, the tool, the perspective, compassionate inquiry, being odd DHD, unique polarized nervous system and brain needs, self-trust. I love the idea of soft life, like life and work, like soft entrepreneurship, creative life and work, garden, not a machine. And then in the context of midlife, and I see so many people that are struggling invisibly, and midlife is a really discombobulating time, and you're not necessarily having an external crisis, but there's a lot of inside stuff going on that needs to be talked about, and it's not just one directional. I've had lots of conversations with coaching, the entity of coaching, like, can I fall in love with coaching? I've also deconstructed a lot around the coaching industry, and the personal development industry. And, I have pretty much left the let me help you make more money industry. And it's been an interesting challenge to really step into this inner work. And when neurotypical mass media is loaded at me every day, I have a part that says people don't want this. They just want to know how to make money. And it reminds me of the guy that was shot in New York City yesterday, the CEO of the healthcare company. And there are reports that the other shareholders, they had to have this meeting in person, stepped over his dead body to start their meeting on time. And I realize that I live in a world where that is true, that this is true in the coaching world too. It's one of the reasons I don't do a lot of corporate coaching is because the coaching client is actually the shareholders. It's never the human being. And I coach human beings. I don't coach a human being for the benefit of a shareholder. That is not my realm. The other thing I came across this year, and I don't necessarily have it in this journal, it probably happened before then, but I came up with my version. Someone I love is always saying to me, Allison, you can't be such a hater of capitalism. And I'm like, yes, I can. Absolutely, I can. And it's not just unfettered capitalism. Capitalism itself is a structure that is set up to screw a lot of people over. But what I am for, so that doesn't mean that you can't work for yourself. It doesn't mean that you can't make money, but it is, so I've come to commerce, the exchange of goods and services for something of value without exploitation, and without exploitation of my audience, without exploitation of the earth, if I can help it, without exploitation of myself. And in my past, I think of all the things in the system that I exploited, I was exploiting myself. A lot of people, we see it all the time where people are exploiting their audience. I wasn't exploiting my audience, I was exploiting myself. That was a big realization. And for a while, I pulled away and wasn't able to even offer it because I didn't want to be a part of this nasty system. But I was able to take that on and realize that, yeah, I could be involved in the exchange of goods and services. And sometimes that's for money. I'm starting to get to know my personal ADHD autism accommodations, like the systems that are set up. And it's interesting because without my accommodations, I don't think I would have been able to attend the Taylor Swift Eras Tour in Toronto a couple weeks ago. But I felt very confident when I was offered the ticket that I would be able to last minute jump on a plane and go and travel. And there was a lot of plane travel and there was a lot of car travel, but I was like, oh, I know how to accommodate myself in schedule, I have quite a list of accommodations. And I also gave myself, like, I was in physical pain for 2 weeks after that, but it's totally worth it. But learning my accommodations, I'm also learning systems and tools in my businesses that are really helping me not have to I'm working on learning how to support myself in my business with systems. And I used to hear people say, what do you mean systems? And now I'm like, I have a system for everything. I have a very specific way of doing something and I have a reason for doing it. I do not work off inspired action anymore at all. I've done some exploration around what professional consistency looks like, and my version of consistency is not symmetrical. It's probably asymmetrical consistency. That professional and personal, I have a lot of journal pages where I talk about what's professional and what's personal. That's not so much like authenticity has become this buzzword, but it's a state of being. What is the professional state of being? If my job is running this business, what are my professional responsibilities? Because the last 2 years, I stepped back from leadership and I was able to just coach. And so I was able to just be relational in those relationships. And I got, basically I shut down my leadership. I shut down my marketing. I shut down all support I had. And so I'm just rebuilding that and figuring out what it is. Oh, this is a beautiful page. So this is a page where I am writing down the struggles and then the parts, what they believe in it. And even just reading, so much constraint in my heart. It's the money piece that's fucking freaking me out. Feel like a fucking failure. I guess I have more anger and sadness to purge. And as I see this written on this page, you know what I feel instead of embarrassment? I feel so much love. Hello, anger. Hello, rage. Hello, resentment. When is the last time you gave yourself compassionate connection and attunement with your anger, rage, and resentment? I love it. Okay, let's see if there's anything good towards the end. I've been playing on YouTube. It's one of the things that I noticed. I took Thanksgiving off, but it's one of the things I noticed. I've been trying to follow like the openness and lightness in my body. And normally, like an ADD person would usually choose a project that's not long term. And in the past, I've been able to have a lot of short term results. And choosing, after playing and experimenting for about 3 or 4 months, in October, I committed to creating on YouTube, which is different from creating everywhere else. And it's interesting to commit to run a marathon instead of a sprint, because there is not a whole lot of feedback or results or money, or there's just not a whole lot. So it's fascinating. But I noticed I'd get all in my head, and then all of a sudden I'd see some how-to video on YouTube, and I'd like, oh, there she is. Like, right. And so I'm just paying attention to not what I should do, because after all these years in business, my brain knows what I should do, and learning how to listen to following my feel good again, even when it goes against normal business advice. Oh, that's interesting. I've also done I've done the Wheel of Life a few times, which is like coaching 101. I've done a lot of entry level assessments over again, because I am not the same person I was 6 months ago. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. And sometimes a part of me criticizes, like, quit going back to the beginning. You're just avoiding doing the work you're at now. And I realize, right, this is part of that unmasking thing, and the cognitive and the synapses connected to that is like I'm rebuilding my synaptic structures for business action and confidence as somebody who recognizes the support and accommodation her system needs and her gifts. I've done a lot of work around, should I create another membership program? It's all ready to go. I just haven't launched it because I don't know if I want to. And I don't want to launch it unless I know I want to launch it. Someone asked if I was at a Tom Ferry event in Austin. No. What does it mean to be a good person? That comes from old school stuff at church. A cute little page with stickers and Taylor Swift. YouTube. Open my heart, open my mind, open my brain. This is one of the things today too. Yesterday I was talking with my coach, and as we were talking back and forth, I just had this awareness of like, I've got to open myself, not only not reaching back for who I was before or the audience I had before. And it doesn't mean like starting new slate, but I have to give myself opportunity to appeal to different audiences. I have to give myself opportunity to have new people find my work, whereas and it doesn't mean that the people I worked with before aren't welcome, but my audience and my ideal client has shifted somewhat, and that's not something I put on paper. I have these 3 pages. I haven't worked on them yet, but it's my be, do, have. And I really want to spend some time intuitively thinking about, who do I want to be? What are the elements of being? What are the elements of doing? And what are the elements of having? And for me, that takes a little, so I write out the structure, and I can't just sit down and think about it. I have to, it's like a stew, it marinates, and then I pick out the pieces. Okay, and I'll finish on this one. Watching that video with Ashley Judd talking about her mom and talking with Anderson Cooper, and then watching another video with Anderson Cooper and Frances Weller, who is one of my favorite all-time favorite teachers and authors, and he wrote The Wild Edge of Sorrow. It is one of my top 5 favorite books. And so between those 2 videos, and I recognized her using what I call recovery language, and then an IFS coach that I've been going to parts practice work with, and he talks about being a recovery coach. And yes, he works with people in recovery from, let's say alcoholism, but he talks about recovering your authentic self, and it just landed. And so I've been playing with the last month or so. Allison, what do you want? What do I want to recover? What do I want to regain that I have lost? And yeah, and as I watched Frances Weller talk with Anderson Cooper on this YouTube video last Sunday, and I felt it so deeply that I'm actually able to recall it now, which has not been something I've been able to do. I can see and feel and know the work that I am here to do, and what specifically it is recovering in me, what specifically it is shedding in my life as a child, and in the way I managed it unsuccessfully as an adult. I am, I have, I allow. I work in a different way. And I'm going to end also with how I started, and actually what had me want to do this random hour-long live with y'all was I am not mainstream. And there's a little girl in me that I remember mowing the yard when I was little and getting really cute to mow the yard. I told my brother I would do it for him, which was dumb. But I thought, oh, a movie producer is going to come and discover me. And that little girl just wanted this mainstream rescue. And I'm not mainstream. Oprah ain't coming. I've done that for a long time. The work that I do is not at a 5th grade level. It's not mainstream. God bless Mel Robbins. I was listening to her one day and I was like, that is so elementary. And a lot of people need that. And I'm sure she's more than elementary, but that's not me. I do like graduate school inner work. I do advanced personal development. I remember my irritation leading me to go see Brendon Burchard was here in Austin, Texas. And there was something he shared one morning and I was like, dang, that's actually really good. That's pretty, I took lots of notes. And at the end, he goes, my people tell me that I need to dumb this down for you. And I was like, that is why my little Oscar the Grouch asked me to go to this, because it was good to see somebody on stage who has had mainstream success acknowledge that all his advisors say, you're being too complicated and nuanced. You need to dumb this down for the masses. That's not me. I'm not mainstream. And you might not be mainstream either. So with that, thank you for spending time with me.